Welcome to the History, Law, and Justice podcast. In our special Hollywood Takes on History episodes, I take a look at movies, as well as television and streaming service series that either feature historical figures or focus on real-life events. During each episode, I will highlight what the production got right historically and identify the areas of history in which the movie or show failed to meet a baseline of accuracy. Before we begin the episode, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, you're invited to share your thoughts on today's topic or anything dealing with history and the law in the comment sections below or on our social media platforms. Today I'm going to review the American-produced television series Spartacus, which was broadcast on the Starz cable network from January 22nd, 2010 to April 12, 2013. The series featured Andy Whitfield as Spartacus. Unfortunately, due to Andy's post-season 1 battle with and later death from cancer, McIntyre stepped into the role of Spartacus. Manu Bennett played Crixus. Lawless was featured as Lucretia. And the three were supported by a talented cast of actors and actresses. The show took place during the late Roman Republic and focused on Spartacus, who was Thracian. Thrace is a region in southeast Europe, now forming parts of Bulgaria, Greece, and Turkey. Spartacus was a former member of the Roman army auxiliary, which were persons recruited from non-Roman tribes. The auxiliaries assisted the Roman legionnaires in campaigns and battles. Spartacus's auxiliary experience enabled him to become familiar with Roman military strategy and tactics, which more than likely aided him in the future slave revolt. Later, after becoming a gladiator, Spartacus started a slave uprising in Capua, Italy, that lasted from 73 to 71 BCE, which took him throughout the Italian peninsula with the revolt. This slave war is also called the Gladiator War, the War of Spartacus, and the Third Servile War, since Rome experienced two prior major slave conflicts. The first season of the show was titled Spartacus, Blood and Sand. Due to Whitfield's cancer diagnosis, Starz elected to produce a prequel miniseries entitled Spartacus, Gods of the Arena. After Whitfield died on September 11, 2011, Starz tapped McIntyre to assume the role. He took that role in the final two seasons of the series, which were entitled Spartacus Vengeance and Spartacus War of the Damned. Season 1 of Spartacus was the origin story. Namely, the producers focused on who was Spartacus, where was he from, and how did he become a gladiator in the Roman Republic. Based on available records, the first season appears to adhere broadly to history. It establishes Spartacus as a Thracian, who fought for the Romans as an auxiliary and was captured and enslaved by the Romans. Spartacus later trained as a gladiator in Capua, Italy. Now, the gray area that the show had was, 1, while history confirms the Romans enslaved the Thracians, historians can only theorize whether the Romans and Thracians originally collaborated, as depicted in the show. And 2, the show portrays Spartacus as one of the best gladiators in the area, but there are no definitive records to that effect. Season 1 gives the audience a unique and apparently accurate look at the training of a gladiator, as well as Spartacus's tenure as a gladiator under the Capua-based house and gladiator school of Cornelius Batiatus, who really existed. The season correctly shows Spartacus starting the revolt at the school with about 70 slaves. All seasons of the series did an excellent job of accurately displaying the everyday lives of Romans, freedmen, and slaves. We see the Romans' villas, clothes, food, politics, cultural events, and other unique details of their everyday lives. We also see the Romans reward gladiators who performed well in the arena. Freedom was bestowed on a few, but other prizes like wine and time with women were provided to the other top performers. The series featured a very large supporting cast of persons from history. What we know from Roman records shows that Spartacus was assisted in the rebellion by Crixus, Eumaeus, Gannicus, and Castus, who all actually existed. Now, we don't know the precise role of each person, but what we do know, as acknowledged by the Romans, that each of those individuals depicted in the show had leadership positions in the rebellion. We also see the show bring to life from the pages of history Romans like Glaber, Varinius, Crassus, Julius Caesar, and at the very end of the last episode, Pompey the Great. Interestingly, during that last episode, the series gave hints at the future formation of the first triumvirate, which was an unofficial but powerful political alliance between Caesar, Crassus, and Pompey that ruled the Roman Republic from behind the scenes from 60 to 53 BCE. The show depicts some of the major engagements of the Third Civil War, including Spartacus's dramatic move against the Romans at Mount Vesuvius and the final battle between Crassus and Spartacus's army. During these engagements, we see the Romans employ various historically accurate military tactics. Season 1 shows Spartacus' wife being separated from him and eventually returned to him on the verge of death. However, according to history, Spartacus and his wife are together at some point before the start of the war, and she escapes with Spartacus, the gladiators, and slaves at the start of the rebellion. Seasons 1 and 2 featured Glaber as a main villain, and Season 3 had Marcus Crassus as the antagonist. Spartacus directly interacts with Glaber several times, and one time with Crassus. The series portrayed Glaber as a person directly responsible for betraying Spartacus and selling him into slavery. In turn, Spartacus sought revenge against Glaber. In Season 3, Crassus is charged by the Roman Senate to end the slave revolt once and for all. Spartacus and Crassus share a brief conversation before the final battle in the last episode of the series. Now, history does not contain any evidence Spartacus had any personal interactions or conversations or any type of discussions with Glaber or Crassus. We believe that those conversations serve as a dramatic device to propel the story. Season 3 introduces Tiberius Licinius Crassus, the eldest son of Marcus Crassus, and his father's word and will in the army. However, the character of Tiberius is a fictional device for the story. History shows that Crassus did not have a son named Tiberius. He had two sons, the oldest of which was born in 86 or 85 BCE. Thus, it would have been virtually impossible for the eldest son to have been involved in the revolt, since the slave revolt of Spartacus started in 73 BCE, which would have made the eldest son, the real eldest son of Marcus Crassus, to be either 12 or 13 years of age, much too young to have served in the army. Season 3 introduces a younger version of the famous Julius Caesar. In the show, Caesar works with Crassus in a Roman campaign to defeat Spartacus. In fact, a few episodes has Caesar infiltrate Spartacus' operation. Later, Caesar is made a senior leader in Crassus' army. According to history, however, Caesar, although he did live in Italy, there's no indication that he was directly involved in the Spartacus campaign. Now, he could have been involved, And if he was, due to Caesar's age at the time, he more than likely was probably a military tribune, but not a senior leader in Crassus's army. After the conclusion of the final battle, which occurred in the last episode of the series, Spartacus is mortally wounded, Crassus has defeated the slave army, and Crassus orders the crucifixion of the remaining survivors. The series ends with the death and burial of Spartacus. However, the manner and time of Spartacus' death remains a mystery to us, and it was a mystery to the contemporary Roman. Spartacus' body was never discovered after the battle, and there is no account of his death or record of where he was buried. Overall, for Roman history buffs, the Spartacus series provided a provocative story, offered attention to detail in costumes and language, and had engaging characters. I applaud the producers for attempting to stay loyal to history as much as possible. Yes, I know there is dramatic license taken throughout the series, but it did not cheapen the series or lessen its impact on how we view Spartacus today in modern society. You have just listened to the History, Law, and Justice podcast with your host, Michael Buckner. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions or feedback on this episode, Michael's contact information is included in the description box. Citations to sources used to prepare this episode are also listed in the description box. Finally, don't forget to click on the link to subscribe to receive the next episode of this podcast. Remember to let history serve as your roadmap for future success.